Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. I've been involved with quality for over 40 plus years, and that encompasses aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt in every industry. I know a lot of you have heard this before, but now I have a very special guest here, Mr. Mark Spector, who writes for Reuters. How are you doing, Mark? Thank you very much for stopping in this morning. I saw that you wrote, and this video today is about Mark Spector, reporter, Boeing executives unlikely to be charged over 737 MAX crashes, source says. Now that's a source, but we want to show you, Mark, why, when, and how. You'll find out about the DOJ. You'll find out about other federal agencies all sitting on the American National Standards Institute. You will see. Sit down. Thanks again, Mark, and let me give you an education. This past April, Mark, I was down in Washington, D.C. We'll see the picture once again throughout this video. I was down there supporting Sam Salipar, the whistleblower for the 777, 787 aircraft. And those two documents we have. Also, we are going to show some of that to you. We have a ton of information corroborating what Sam was saying about the design flaws of the 777, 787, and other aircraft as well that Boeing produces. But let's continue on. One of the things I'm going to say, Mark, too, is that a lot of reporters are not truly reporting the facts. The fact is, and you're going to see it, that Boeing was made an FAA regulator in 2009. Now, everybody says it, Daryl, it's old news, but let me tell you, you guys and gals are not going further. Not only were they made an FAA regulator, meaning Boeing employees are equivalent to FAA inspectors, but they were also getting financed by Boeing. Those people are still Boeing employees, so who would they have their allegiance to, Mark? Of course, Boeing. But getting on to it, Boeing did not have to tell the FAA about the MCAS system that was on the Ethiopian jet and also the Indonesian jet. They didn't have to tell them. They are the FAA. And when Sam brought about the information concerning aircraft designs, they didn't have to tell that either. So sit down, relax, and let me show you. ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has federal agencies and corporations on board. They've been around for almost 100 years. In 2009, in 2015, Randy Doherty, then the vice president of ANAP, chairman of the IAF, and also the principal on the IAF 990 tax form, handed over leadership to this communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who is a communist Chinese national, and at the time he was also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, and that organization also certified the laboratory in Wuhan, China, that released the COVID virus. On top of it, he is mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, to take our data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, took over complete control of the American National Crediting Board in 2018. At the time when Zhao Jinwu was controlling the IAF, which is incorporated in Delaware, it is a repository for both national and international accreditation bodies. It is also the sister of the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. You will also find out that ANSI and ANAB are underwriters for those organizations sitting on those two associations. We have Boeing sitting on ANSI's board. And here we go. You have the Department of Homeland Security. And I was in front of the Department of Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee Investigation Subcommittee on Capitol Hill. So between 2015 and 21, the DHS was getting, as a friend of mine said, Rich, who's got 40 years in quality plus, he said it's not hacking our information, it's giving it away. So it felt like I was giving a deposition in front of the CCP. We have Andrew Marakis. Thank you very much, Andre, for coming in. We also have the factor, by the way, Mark, that we have a guy here. His name is Phil Mattson. He's the Executive Director of Standards of U.S. Department of Homeland Security. At the time when he sat on ANSI, he was getting his federal salary, plus he was getting $262,000 from ANSI, getting paid. There is a specification called 1711, ISO 1711, which is for both registration companies, accreditation, and also accreditation bodies. And it says you're not supposed to have any financial intertwining like you're having the DHS being paid off by ANSI. And it is a payoff. Unbelievable. On top of his federal salary. We also have the Department of Justice who's investigating Boeing. And as you see, Boeing's on the board. And here's Mr. Merrick Garland, the head of the Department of Justice. You see anything wrong with that so far, Mark? You have the factor, too, that the IAF that I told you about, the ANSI was a founding member. Actually, they founded the IAF. And here it is, the IAF and ILAC. The IAF is the sister organization of the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation in Australia. To prove to you, Mark, that there is a problem with underwriting, you have this government contract. You can look it up for sure. And you also have on there the factor that ANSI, ANAP are underwriters for the International Accreditation Forum. That means any type of systematic or product failure, ANSI, ANAP takes responsibility. Now we go on to Boeing, who also, again, I told you, sits on ANSI's board, right over by the DOJ, right over by, that's why the DOJ is going to do nothing, because they all sit together. In 2002, in April, Boeing came out with a supplier bulletin for special processes. And it basically says for heat treat, for welding, for non-destructive testing, it says this: you send in your PRI, which is Performance Review Institute certificate, after they look at your system, send it into Boeing, and Boeing doesn't have to do an on-site audit. You also have the factor, that was in April of 2002. You have July 2002 is the supplier bulletin. That it says this on there: if you have an AS9100 certificate, which is for aerospace, Mark, if you have an AS9100, which is certified to ANSI ANAP, because you're going to see that Boeing sits on their boards, you send in your cert, you send in the parts, and Boeing doesn't have to do any on-site audits for 22 years. Here goes the Perez Resistance. This is an article that was out in 2009 telling you about self-certification of Boeing. It also tells you, and this is where it comes in, about the MCAS system and also about product design. The new system allows Boeing employees to perform tasks on behalf of the FAA that include oversight of testing and product standards, along with certification of aircraft technologies. There's MCAS, Mark, and new aircraft designs, and that's where Sam Salipar comes in, and he stated that. You have on Boeing supplier portal, it's calling for ANSI, ANAP, or international equivalent. And the international equivalent, because they are equivalent in accreditation to ANSI, ANAP, are like countries like Pakistan, who harbored Osama bin Laden. You also have the factor right here that Boeing sits on the Management System Accreditation Committee that can grant, suspend, and withdraw certification. Isn't that a tender moment? And then you have, of course, the FAA sitting on the board. So, Mark, let me just say this. You're absolutely correct. The DOJ is going to do nothing with Boeing's management, because you know what the problem is? They all sit together, fat and happy, on the American National Standards Institute. Can you imagine that mess? My telephone number is 203-556-1493 or Daryl, TQRS@yahoo.com. The rest of the information, pertinent information, will be down below this video in the description. Thank you, Mark, for stopping in.